The first sign that something was changing came on an ordinary afternoon. When Linda Harris stood at her kitchen window and realized she no longer recognized the woman reflected in the glass. At 48, her life was stable, quiet, and carefully organized, but it felt thin, like a story missing its middle. Her divorce had been final for 3 years. There were no fights anymore, no tears. It's just a steady routine that filled time without filling her heart. Her daughter Emily was the center of everything. Emily was 24, driven, and newly settled into her first real job in Chicago. Linda was proud of her in a way that made her chest ache. Every call from Emily sounded full of excitement, of purpose. Linda listened closely, smiling into the phone, hiding the loneliness that came when the call ended. That was when Emily first mentioned Mark Reynolds. At first, it was just a name. "My boss is intense but fair," Emily said one evening. "He pushes people, but he's not cruel." Linda nodded, half listening, washing dishes while Emily talked about deadlines and meetings. Managers came and went. This one meant nothing, but Mark's name kept returning. Emily mentioned how he stayed late, how he defended her idea in a meeting, how he encouraged her to speak up. Linda noticed the pride in her daughter's voice. It reminded her of how young people sound when they feel seen for the first time. Weeks later, Emily called again, excited. "Mom, Mark is coming to Ohio for a conference. He offered to drop me off after dinner. I hope that's okay." Linda paused. She didn't know why her chest tightened. "Of course," she said. "Tell him he's welcome to come in." She didn't think about the words. She didn't know they mattered. The night Mark arrived, rain tapped softly against the windows. Linda set out cups without thinking, wiped the counter twice, and adjusted her sweater. When the doorbell rang, she felt a strange rush, like anticipation mixed with fear. Mark Reynolds was not what she expected. He was taller, broader, with silver already touching his hair. His smile was calm, practiced, but his eyes carried something tired and honest. He shook Linda's hand firmly and thanked her for the invitation as if it meant more than politeness. Emily chatted easily. But Linda noticed Mark's attention drift toward her now and then, not in a way that felt wrong, just curious. They spoke about the weather, the drive, the house. Nothing important. Nothing dangerous. After Emily went upstairs to grab her bag, Mark mentioned his late wife. He said it simply, without drama. Linda felt a soft pull of empathy. Loss recognizes loss. For a moment, the room felt quieter, closer. When they left, Linda stood in the doorway longer than necessary, watching the car disappear down the street. She told herself she was imagining things. Days passed. Life returned to normal. And yet, Linda caught herself thinking about the way Mark listened, how he didn't rush his words. It unsettled her. Then the messages started. They were polite. At first, a thank you for the coffee, a note saying Emily was doing great at work. Linda replied because it felt rude not to. She told herself it was harmless, but the tone changed slowly. Mark asked about her life, about the divorce, about how she was adjusting to living alone. Linda answered honestly, surprised by how easy it was to open up. He didn't interrupt. He didn't fix anything. He just understood. She hadn't realized how much she needed that. Linda began to wait for his messages. She hated that part of herself. She told herself it was just conversation, just two adults being friendly. Still, her heart beat faster when her phone lit up with his name. One afternoon, Mark wrote that he would be visiting Ohio again. "If you're free," he added, "I'd love to get coffee. It's just to talk." Linda stared at the screen for a long time. She thought about Emily's trust, about her own quiet nights, about the version of herself that existed only in memory. The woman who once laughed without effort. She said yes. The cafe was small and warm, filled with the sound of cups and low voices. When Mark walked in, Linda felt an unexpected relief, like meeting someone she already knew. They sat across from each other, close enough to feel the space between them shrink. They talked fast, like time mattered. Childhood stories, mistakes, Regrets. Mark spoke about loneliness after loss, about how work had become a shield. Linda spoke about marriage fading slowly, about staying too long because leaving felt like failure. There was no touch, no promise. Just words that landed softly and stayed. When they parted, Linda walked to her car with trembling hands. She told herself it was the last time. She promised herself she would pull back. She didn single quotes, towed over the next weeks. Their connection deepened. Messages turned into calls. Calls stretched late into the night. They laughed quietly so no one else would hear. Linda began to feel present again, awake in a way she hadn't been in years. Guilt followed closely. Every time Emily called to praise her boss, Linda's chest tightened. She wanted to confess, to stop, to rewind everything back to that first night. But she didn single quotes to Mark tried to slow things down. He reminded her of Emily. He reminded her of the cost. Linda listened, but part of her resented him for being reasonable. She had spent so long being careful, doing the right thing, choosing others over herself. This felt like one night. Linda sat alone in her living room, phone in her hand, realizing she was standing on a line she couldn't see but could feel. She hadn't crossed it fully, but she was close enough to know the fall would be deep. Outside, the street was quiet. Inside, her heart was loud. She didn't know how it would end. She only knew that something had already begun, and walking away would hurt almost as much as staying, and that scared her more than anything else. Chicago greeted Linda with cold air and moving crowds. And for the first time in years, she felt small in a way that was not painful. The city did not know her. It did not expect anything from her. She told Emily the trip was about rest, about seeing museums and walking by the lake. Emily sounded happy for her, proud even, and that made the lie heavier. Mark met her the next morning near the river. He looked different here, more at ease, like the city belonged to him. They did not. They did not speak about rules or limits. They walked side by side, letting the noise of the city carry them forward. Linda felt her thoughts sharpen, her steps quicken. She was not drifting anymore. They talked without stopping, about work pressure, about growing older without a partner, about the strange fear of becoming invisible. Mark admitted that after his wife died, life became careful and narrow. Linda admitted she stayed in her marriage longer than she should have because silence felt safer than change. Each truth landed clean and sharp. They stopped at a cafe. Their knees touched under the table. Neither moved away. Linda noticed how easily Mark laughed, how he listened without judgment. She also noticed the way he paused before speaking, as if choosing honesty over comfort every time. The days that followed blurred into motion. Walks through neighborhoods, long talks at night, quiet dinners where words mattered more than food. Nothing explicit happened, but the tension grew heavier, thicker, harder to ignore. Linda felt it. In her chest, in the space between every sentence. At night, alone in her hotel room, guilt returned. She stared at the ceiling, thinking of Emily's voice, Emily's trust. She told herself she would end it. She promised herself tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow never was. Mark struggled too. He pulled back more than once, reminding Linda that this path led nowhere clean. He said Emily would be hurt. He said he would never forgive himself. Linda heard him, but fear spoke louder. Fear of going back to quiet rooms and long evenings alone. Fear of losing the version of herself that had come alive. One evening, snow began to fall. The city slowed. Mark invited Linda to his apartment to warm up, just to talk. The space was simple, lived in, books on shelves, old photos tucked away, proof of a life that had known love and loss. They sat close on the couch. The silence grew heavy. When Mark spoke, his voice was low and careful. He said this had gone too far. He said they had to stop before it became something they could not undo. Linda felt panic rise. She told him she didn't want to disappear again. She told him she felt seen, valued, real. Her words came fast, honest, raw. Mark listened, eyes dark with conflict. He didn't argue. He didn't promise anything. He just reached for her hand. That touch changed everything. It was gentle, trembling, full of restraint. Linda knew then that this was no longer a quiet mistake. It was a choice, one she would have to carry. After that night, distance became impossible. Even when they tried to act normal, everything felt charged. Every look meant more. Every silence spoke louder. Linda knew the end was coming. She just didn't know how brutal it would be. Emily called often. She spoke about work, about Mark, about upcoming projects. Linda answered carefully, measuring every word. Each call left her shaken. The truth pressed harder every day. Mark suggested ending it again. He said they were hurting someone who didn't deserve it. Linda agreed. She meant it. But when the moment came to step away, neither could fully let go. The breaking point came suddenly. Emily arrived in Chicago earlier than planned, excited to surprise her mom. She texted Mark to ask about meeting for lunch. Mark froze when he saw the message. Linda knew before he spoke that everything was about to collapse. They met Emily together, forced smiles barely holding. Emily noticed the tension, the stiffness, the way her mother avoided Mark's eyes. Confusion crossed her face. Later that night, Emily confronted Linda. Her voice was calm but shaking. She asked if something was going on. She asked if she had done something wrong. Linda broke. The words spilled out uneven and painful. The truth came without detail, without defense. Just the fact of it. The betrayal. The mistake. The love that should not have existed. Emily's silence was worse than anger. Her face hardened. Her eyes filled, then closed. She said nothing for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat. She said she felt foolish. She said trust once broken never returns the same. Mark tried to explain later. Emily didn't listen. She quit her job within weeks. She stopped answering Linda's calls. The fallout was swift and unforgiving. Mark resigned, unable to stay. Linda returned to Ohio alone, carrying the weight of what she had lost. Months passed. The city grew quiet again. Linda's house felt colder. The escape was over. One day, a message came from Emily. Short, careful, not forgiving, but not cruel. A small opening. Linda knew some wounds never fully heal. She also knew that the brief fire she had lived in had shown her something true about herself. Love had come late, wrong, and costly. But it had reminded her she was still alive.